I always like playing video games. And I love science too. We do science because we find it fun and we like it. And that's exactly the same thing that we're doing when we play video games. My name is Jérôme Waldispühl, and I'm an associate professor of computer science here at McGill University. I started realizing the potential of video games when I was probably playing a Tetris or this type of game, puzzle game, and realizing it was very close to day-to-day activities we're doing in the lab when visualizing, expecting results from computers on some DNA alignment. Metagenomics is about all the life, all the genomes living everywhere, on our skin, on the floor, everywhere there are a lot of microbes and viruses. And we're trying to have a better understanding about how they distribute, how they interact together. So one of the challenges we aim to address here is to help biologists to retrieve a metagenomic sample fragment of viruses to better understand how they spread in the urban settings. Because before starting to develop new drugs or advancing biomedical knowledge, we need to understand what's there. So the research is important for the public because it's about public health eventually, because it's creates a safer environment for everyone, everywhere. As a computer scientist, I know what are the limitations of computers. They're very good at crunching a lot of numbers, very fast, massive data set, but they have also interesting limitations. And in particular, they cannot replace the work of a scientist, a human looking at the data, bringing context, interpreting the data. My research aims to, through video games, build a computing system that use the power of computer and the intelligence of humans. There are more than 3 billion players of video games in the world. And what we're trying to achieve is to go to these people and showing them that they can contribute to science. Science is not that complicated, and actually science is fun. It is important here because to process the genomic data that we have, and we need a lot of people to help us. We don't have enough people in a lab to look at all these data one by one, so we need citizen science to engage a massive amount of people to help scientists to have more accurate data for their day-to-day research. The approach we're developing is to put back the result of the computers into small puzzles, a bit like Tetris, that is made not from random material, but from genomic material, and ask people to analyze this data, to identify potential mistakes or biases that an algorithm may have. And the player basically now contribute because the game is fun, but continue playing it because it's useful. We have a sense of enjoyment every time that we're looking at new data and finding things that no one's seen before. People were actually massively enthusiastic about the initiatives and were happy to be able to contribute to something good by doing their favorite activities, which is video games.